this guy right here, he's got way too much value. Because with his stats looking like this, and his relics looking like this, and notice that the majority of them don't even have the substats that we want, like speed, crit rate, crit damage, HP, and using a 4-star light cone of his arch nemesis at S1, no Eidelons, but with maxed out traces, he's doing damage like this, and this, and this, and he's tanky, and he's got 2 heals. All I can say to that is that I hope you're ready to open your wallets. Hi, I'm Lace. Today, let's talk about Edgy Boy. Blade. It's one thing to be a content creator and be like, oh, he's cracked, he's so good, you should roll for him. But it's another thing to be like, hey, isn't that like a lot more damage than some of our erudition characters who are supposed to have lower survivability but do a lot more damage? That, my guys, is essentially Blade in a nutshell. So your boy is a wind destruction character, and his whole shtick is, oh, I'm gonna pay some HP, consume HP, and I'm gonna deal a lot of damage. And so therefore, his stat priorities are speed over HP, over crit rate, over crit damage. However, there are 2 more things I need to stress. The first is that every single point you get into HP is worth 2.5 times more than attack. So if I head on to over here, you can see that the ratio of his attack to HP scaling is always going to be 40% of 100%. So 44 to 110, that's 2.5 times. What this means is that you don't build attack. Attack is just a bonus. And the second thing is speed tuning him is going to be a little bit annoying. And we'll go through the concept of slow blade versus fast blade a little bit later. All right, let's talk about his kit. For his basic attack, there's not too much going on over here, just a regular old basic attack. However, keep in mind that this bad boy actually scales purely off of attack, which is bad because if we're building HP, we definitely don't want to be using this because we have no attack to scale off of. So what that means is that we need to make sure that we're using this enhanced basic attack, which does scale off of max HP. And so to get his enhanced basic attack, we use his skill. And this bad boy consumes HP to put him into Hellscape state. Now, the cool thing about this is that using his skill Hellscape doesn't actually end his turn, because you then get to use his enhanced basic attack. And so as you can see, this thing is AOE, hits 3 targets, main target in the middle, and the ones on the left and the right. The scaling of the side ones are reduced to 40%, so it's not like it's giga cracked, but it is certainly nice for breaking. Also, these enhanced basic attacks actually do cost HP, and they don't use skill points, but they don't generate them either. And lastly, if Blade uses his Forest of Swords enhanced basic attack on a weakness broken enemy, then he will actually restore HP equal to 5% of his max HP plus 100. And that, my guys, is his first source of healing. And so what this means is that you're going to be skilling and enhanced basic attacking all in one turn, and then enhanced basic attack, enhanced basic attack, enhanced basic attack, and then you're going to go back to the start and loop that pretty much. That's pretty much his rotation. It's very straightforward. For his ultimate, he sets his current HP to 50%, and then he does big AOE damage. In terms of the scaling, it's actually quite similar to his enhanced basic attack, where he does a lot of damage to the central target, but only, again, 40% to the side ones. However, the cool thing about this one is that it actually also scales off of the total HP that he has lost in the current battle, up to a cap of 90% of his max HP. And so in terms of this HP setting mechanic, it could either be used as a heal, or it could actually cost HP. And why I really emphasize this costing HP thing is because of his talent. It's honestly really freaking nice. Because every time he takes damage or he consumes his own HP, he gains 1 stack and it goes up to 5. When he finally reaches 5 stacks, he'll then use a follow-up attack on all enemies and does a massive wind damage AoE to everyone. The nice thing about this one is that it actually does equal amounts of damage to all of the targets, as opposed to like the ultimate and the enhanced basic attack doing most damage to the central target and 40% scaling to the side targets. This one beats them all up equally. He also restores 25% of his max HP every time he uses his talent. And that's just so incredibly freaking good because that is his second source of healing. Now, what's even nicer about his traces is that with this bad boy over here, that talent gets 20% more damage. And so there is one more trace that we didn't talk about, and it's that his incoming healing increases by 20% if his current HP is less than 50% of his max HP. And as for the technique, it's a combat entering one where it does damage, costs HP, therefore gives him a stack. Okay, let's talk relics, and to be honest, it's really freaking straightforward. For the main set, you want to farm for the new set, Longevous Disciple, and this bad boy is really freaking good because it gives max HP, but on top of that, it also gives crit rate. Conditional though, because the wearer has to either get hit or they have to consume their own HP. I don't know. kind of looks like this was made for Blade. For the planar sets, it's either going to be the new Rutilant Arena set, where it actually gives you crit rate, but on top of that, if you're able to get over the threshold, which is freaking 70%, that's really freaking high, then the wearer's basic attack and skill damage increases by 20%. That's really nice because of the enhanced basic attacks. However, again, this 70% is like really freaking steep. The other alternative is actually to go with the inert Salsodo over here, and this guy also gives you crit rate, but the threshold is only at 50% in comparison to 70. Now, the nice thing about this one is that the follow-up attack damage increases by 15%. And the ultimate. These two are certainly major sources of damage for your blade, and because I'm a Povo and a Brokey, I'm probably going to run this one here. The 70% threshold on the Rutilant Arena is it's really freaking steep. Okay, let's talk main stats. And so just a reminder on his stat priorities. Speed over HP over crit rate over crit damage. So for the body, I'm personally eyeing the crit rate. You could go crit damage, but the more I play this game, the more frustrating it feels when we don't land a crit. Also, the Relic sets, both of them, they both require really high crit rates. If you're somehow able to hit 50% crit rate using Salsodo without using this one and you can run crit damage, then you could do that. For the shoes, you can either run speed or you can run HP. I prefer speed, and this is going to really tie into the fast blade or slow blade that we'll talk about a little bit later. But I think for the majority of people, speed boots, like, you can never really go wrong with them. For the Orbi, it's going to be wind damage boost, and as for the link rope, it is going to be either HP or energy regen. Now, why energy regen? I'm just a big believer of energy recharge being good on literally everyone. However, in this case, Blade actually gets dual benefits from a HP link rope. Extra tankability and extra damage. So most of the time, I'm probably going to be recommending a HP percent link rope. All right, let's talk about light cones. And his light cone is fantastic. It gives crit rate, it gives max HP, it gives extra damage. But after that, what you will notice is that the majority of the other cones for destruction actually gives attack. And my guys, we don't like attack. We don't want any of this. So realistically speaking, there are only 3 options in here that I can actually recommend. The first one is something irreplaceable, and it does give attack, but it does have some other utility such as the HP restoration as well as the damage increase. Also, with it being a 5-star, it is also a really good stat stick. The second one is going to be a Secret Vow, and to be honest, I think that this is probably going to be the best light cone on him for general use, because this bad boy at S1 gives you unconditional 20% damage, and at S5 it goes up to freaking 40%, which is pretty freaking cracked out. On the other hand though, it also gives an extra 20% damage conditional to if your blade has a lower HP percentage than the targets he's hitting. And with your boy constantly trying to harm himself, you know that he's going to be in that situation quite a fair bit. Otherwise, the last one is going to be Mutual Demise. Now, I know it's a 3-star. However, if your current HP is under 80%, your crit rate will be increased by 24%, which is insane. And so if you do end up using this one, remember to include it in your calculations for your Salsodo or the Arena sets. In terms of Blade's trace priorities, between the center 4, the priority doesn't really matter, but the one thing that we can't do this time is not level the basic attack, because this is where the enhanced basic attack is. And as you guys saw, we are going to be using this guy quite a fair bit, so it does have to go up. Alright, let's talk team comps. First, let's talk about his role. Sub DPS versus main DPS. Between sub and main DPS, I personally actually really like main DPS. But that's only because I do have Bronya. Which brings us to the concept of supports. Now, because your boy scales off of max HP, as we have learned throughout this entire video, attack-based supports, such as like your Tingyun, this skill scales on attack, and your Yukong, this one also scales on attack. Your Asta, even your Bronya, they all support via attack. However, between these 4 supports, the one thing that Bronya does have over the rest is that her skill increases damage. And so combining this with the fact that she is also really skill point hungry, I would say that out of all of the Harmony units, I think Bronya has the most synergy with Blade. Again, Yukong, we've got the skill giving extra attack, and we've got Tingyun also scaling on attack. These skills unfortunately are going to be useless for Blade if Blade is the main DPS. Now, if he's the sub DPS and your boy Danheng or somebody else is actually the main DPS, then something like this could actually work, because Tingyun would be focusing on buffing the Danheng or whoever the main DPS is. And honestly, for a team like this, where your Blade is a sub DPS, there's not really much to say about this, because Blade is essentially occupying an offensive supports spot. So like this could be a Bronya or this could be a Silver Wolf instead. And so his only job is to go in and spend skill points once every 3 turns and go break people. And so your last type of support is your defense downers, such as your Silver Wolf, such as your Pella right here. absolutely can run them with full efficiency with Blade because defense down takes full effect. Alright, let's talk a little bit more about the main DPS variant because this is kind of where it gets interesting. The team comp for this one almost always features Bronya. For the other 2 slots, you can put in whoever, Silver Wolf, Pella, Luocha, Bailu, whoever. And so when Bronya is involved, he can either go faster than Bronya, and so therefore attack, Bronya skill, attack, or he can go way slower than Bronya and just have Bronya be like Sonic, Bronya just skilling the blade, bringing him up to go beat some meat. Personally, I prefer fast because again, more attacks means more damage, more heals, more stacks, more energy, more ults. It's just a good time, you know? However, again, remember that fast is going to take a little bit more investment, a little bit more speed tuning because of his slow ass. And so the last thing I wanted to talk about today were his synergies and interactions outside of everyone else that we just talked about. Most obvious being Luocha. I think this one's pretty straightforward. Blade attack, Luocha heal. Blade counter, Luocha heal. However, what I will say is that I do think that people are overvaluing this relationship because Blade can very much work without him, especially with his self-sustain. Now, the next character I want to talk about is Bailu, and this one's a little bit less obvious. She works really well. However, there is a little bit of anti-synergy, and that is in the invigoration, because invigoration is great. He takes damage, he heals some of it back. However, there is an extra effect from a trace over here where all characters with invigoration receive 10% less damage, and 10% less damage means that everyone, including Blade, is taking less damage. It's an anti-synergy because Blade actually wants to take more damage so that his ult does more damage. To be honest, I wouldn't get too caught up in that. I still think he's gonna work perfectly fine, but of course, just something to remember. And speaking of damage reduction, shields, those are kind of like a big no-no for your boy Blade. Your boy wants to get spanked like a masochist, and you know who's not gonna help with that? Japad. We've got Japad, we've got March 7th, these shielders, again, anti-synergy with Blade. And speaking of Japad, anybody who steals aggro away from Blade is also a no-no. For example, Japad's signature light cone, where it essentially multiplies his aggro or whoever's holding it by a crap ton. And so yeah, like my boy Blade, he really hates Japad. That being said though, it doesn't mean that it's not gonna work. I would still definitely run it, especially if the weaknesses fit. But again, just understand these interactions and keep them in mind. And so the last thing to talk about would be his Eidelons. The TLDR is that this gives him more damage, this one gives him more crit, the E4 gives him more tankiness, and the E6 gives him a lot more damage. Honestly, I think he works really freaking well at E0. I've been playtesting him with only at E0. But if you really want to go for the E1, for example, this makes him into like really main DPS material. However, E0 definitely works very well. Otherwise, my guys, that's pretty much the end. Let me know if you're going to be pulling for this man. That said, goodbye.